Hi, this is Ray Harwood of Bigfoot Quest magazine, and I'm interviewing Doug, who is a special effects designer for the movie industry for costumes and monsters and whatnot. So over to you, Doug.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You too. Your work's amazing, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, just one of those things. As a kid, I always wanted to do special makeup effects, and didn't really know how to do it. Just kind of taught myself, and moved to LA when I was 22, and it just snowballed there. Just met people, and just turned out to be a career that once you know people and they appreciate you and your work and your work ethic, you never really have to look for a job. You're
Oh,
always
that's
just
excellent.
constantly rolling it over into the next film production or whatever.
So your
Uh,
influences were like Ray Harryhausen or Stan Winston or
oh
anything?
yeah, yeah, and I actually worked at Stan Winston's. God rest his soul. He's passed away since, but his key guys have moved on and started their own business, and they're still around. John Rosengrant and those guys. But yeah, so, you know, great times. Like I said, I'd spent uh, just north of 15-year career in LA, and then my kids were starting to get a little older. When I say older, they were in elementary school, and I grew up in Southern Ohio, uh, so I didn't really want to raise my kids in LA. It's a totally different family lifestyle dynamic.
Mhm.
I wanted them to have a little more freedom and not so locked down with schools. And
Mhm.
their elementary school was, I want to say it was something like 15,000 kids in an elementary school.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
it was crazy. My graduating class in high school in Ohio was 19.
Yeah, that's quite a difference. That's cultural shock for you.
But yeah, so we moved up to Washington, and I we've been here almost 15 years, and kind of fell into the Bigfoot thing. I mean, I've always known about Bigfoot. As a kid, I remember going to the movie theater with my cousin and seeing the movie Sasquatch, and
Mhm.
that was shot like a documentary, and that really like impacted me, and I really was like, wow, this is amazing. And that was my first real introduction, I think, as a kid to Bigfoot. But anyways, when I moved up here with my effects background, kind of word got out amongst the local film community up here, and there was a local director and producer that was uh, starting to do a uh, a Bigfoot horror film. So they were looking for somebody to do the costume and the makeup effects for that. It was a low budget film, and I kind of worked out a deal with them and created their effects for them. And that was a really fun experience. And since I created that costume for them, it just kind of snowballed, and I've kind of become known as the guy that does Bigfoot. And it
Mhm.
turned into a sort of another separate side business for the realistic Bigfoot costume.com, where I just advertise online my studio quality rental costume for rent, because these costumes cost upwards of $40,000 to make.
Mhm.
So it's not something that everybody can just afford to buy.
Right.
So I do have it for rental, and we travel all over uh, country, even outside of the country with it, and shoot commercials, films. We do events, just depending on what it is, and if they've got the budget to hire us, then we do it.
Yeah, those I guess they call them B movies or whatever for Bigfoot. Those are my favorite. I love those movies. Like
Yeah,
the Bigfoot's what was the one Bigfoot's Weekend or something? Uh
I actually got a call from the producer of that film. He was looking to do a sequel, because he actually was like, well, I actually made a little bit of money on that film, and
yeah, I love that one. Actually, I met him too, and he was a real nice guy, and so I
yeah,
had an idea to make a movie myself, so I wrote the screenplay for him. And he
Yeah.
told me to send it, so I got all hopeful and stuff. But I guess he probably has stacks of those things.
Yeah, that the costume they used in that film is a costume. What's left of remnants of a costume that was done from a movie in by Paul McAfee Designs. It was done in like mid '80s, and I think the film was just titled Bigfoot, but it was a kind of a kids movie, and it had a small like a kid actor in it, and the Bigfoot was kind of friendly, and he had
Mhm.
made this Bigfoot, and it was a good costume, in the '80s. But now the only thing left of it, because it gets old and things rot and fall
Mhm.
apart. So
Right.
his first suit is like it's like a cheap first suit, and he's got the mask still from the original movie and some bits and fur that he puts on like the cuffs,
Hmm.
and then he rents that out. But as far as the rental market, there's nothing out there other really than what I have and then what he has. And then sometimes people try to cobble some stuff where they'll buy like a Chewbacca Halloween costume and try to do a makeup or
Oh,
something
right,
like
right.
that. But it just kind of goes downhill south real
Mhm.
fast. There's a
Right.
lot of Bigfoot movies, and I just wish the producers would just cobble just enough money, because the payoff is always seeing the Bigfoot.
Hmm.
And then whenever you see it's a Halloween costume that they bought from Amazon, you're just like, oh,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
you just cringe.
Like in Willow Creek, you're always waiting to see the
Oh,
Bigfoot, and you never do.
and that's the thing. Bobcat is one of my all-time favorite directors, and I was so excited when I found out he was doing a Bigfoot movie. And then I found out it was found footage, and then I was just like, oh, I hate found footage films.
Yeah, it was
And then
popular because Blair Witch was coming out back then.
yeah, and then I put my feelers out. I was like, well, who, because I got still have tons of friends in the effects business, even in LA still. And I'm like, I wonder what company, just did the Bigfoot for him, because I'm really excited. And I put my feelers out, and nobody knew anything about it. As it turns out, because he didn't have a Bigfoot in, you never see it. It's just, but there again, it's all about budget. He would have had to come up with,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
think it was Primal Rage where they had
Yeah,
a piece of wood over his face so you couldn't really see the
yeah,
face, which was kind of a
yeah,
good idea because it's the face is probably the hardest thing to get real, right? I mean, to get believable. So kind
yeah.
of
But
put
I
those
mean, at
two
least with
together.
that film, though, that film was actually directed, written, and produced by an effects guy, and he
Oh,
starred as the Bigfoot. So he spared no expense, because he was making the effects. So that's why at least that one has a good Bigfoot in it and some good effects, because that's what he does.
that's great. The thing about it is it was kind of like a Rambo movie where it's
Yeah,
kind of like the same feel as Rambo, but
yeah,
then there's a clan of Bigfoots in it, which is
yeah,
great, and they're
yeah.
merciless and stuff. So
And I
yeah,
liked his approach. He took the design liberty to make the face more like a mandrill, like
yeah,
a
like a
mandrill
baboon or something.
family,
Yeah,
without the crazy coloration. So I was like, oh, that was kind of an interesting approach. And then plus, like I said, the mask and the other stuff, it was a totally different take. But yeah, I
yeah. I
actually
read.
paid to go see that in a theater. I wanted to support him. So
Oh yeah, that was really. I really liked it. I watched it a bunch of times.
yeah,
Really,
yeah,
what I liked about it is I was doing research about Willow Creek and Bluff Creek because I did my second magazine was Bluff Creek Special, so I had all the Bigfoot guys that were involved in that left. I either interviewed them or had them write an article, and it was the
yeah,
only one that really did that and got all the original, most of the original people together and stuff. So it came out pretty
yeah,
good. But in fact, I still think it's my bestseller even now. But what I found out was that movie was actually really close to the Aboriginal Native American lore of that area. And yeah, the can't remember what it was called, but anyway, their word for Bigfoot there
yeah.
was what they called
The
it in the movie.
Oma or something like
Oma,
that.
yeah. And
Yeah,
there's
the
an
Oma.
Oma statue in the middle of
Yeah,
town in Willow Creek. And Oma, the myth, the mythology or the legend, it could be a legend, is that it was more like it did shoot arrows. It
yeah,
used it always used red obsidian arrowheads because it was ritually poisoned. And they used to
yeah,
take the Oma used to take soap roots and put them in the water, and it would get in the fish's gills and they'd float up and they'd eat them. So they had this whole backstory, and it was in the movie.
yeah,
When they had the peyote ceremony, and
Yeah,
you could see the Oma, and then they had the Oma dancers. So it really was pretty good actually.
yeah, yeah. That was like I said. Usually you get a lot of turds for what's out there, and that was one of the ones that was just like, well, at least it was done right, and it had its own originality and twist to it.
So
Yeah,
which
I enjoyed that one.
what movies have your Bigfoots been in, if you don't mind me asking that?
Uh, the one that we did, the low budget one we did up when we moved up here into Washington. Uh, that was the original title was called Valley of the Sasquatch, and then
Hmm.
it did the the film festival circuit where basically all you're doing is shopping it around so people can view it, and then you ultimately use that publicity to sell your film. And then it was purchased, and I think that was what was it retitled as? It's slipping my mind what it was retitled as. Hunting Grounds.
Oh
That's what
yeah,
it was
okay.
retitled.
I think
Yeah,
I've
it was
seen
retitled as Hunting Grounds.
it.
Uh, most of usually for all I don't do a lot of Bigfoot films because usually films you have to make a costume because you want it to look specific to that film.
Oh, I see.
And a lot of people don't have the budget. Like I said, on the low end, you're looking at 40K to start.
Wow.
Uh, so they don't have the budget. So because you're making a film with a costume, you're going to destroy it. There's not going to be much of it
Oh, I
because
see.
you're shooting for weeks out in the woods. It's just going to get destroyed, and that's why there's nothing to rent after you shoot a film.
Yeah.
So my Bigfoot costume is usually used for photo shoots, a lot of commercial work. In fact, I just signed a job just an hour ago. I found out in Nebraska with it to do a lottery commercial, state lottery commercial, with
Oh,
two Bigfoots, two of them. Uh, Probably one of the weirdest things I did was in Northern California. There was a guy that had a construction company, and he just was a huge fan of Bigfoot. And in the town, they had this huge festival and a parade, and he always said he wanted to be the grand marshal, driving one of his D9 dozers down the street as a Bigfoot. So
well, that's
we
funny.
actually that was like one of the weirdest things that we ever did with our costume.
I just got to open the garage door as we talk.
Okay.
Then the other one was you said you did Northern Quest. The
Yeah, we did the Northern
that one
Quest
was
commercial.
hilarious.
Yeah,
I
there was another casino we did down in Northern California. Can't remember what that one's. I think it's called something Rivers, but they have a brewery attached to it too, so they kind of use it as their unofficial mascot for the brewery.
oh huh.
Yeah, I mean we've done bank commercials, and gosh, there's just so much with their costume. We have a simple silicone pullover mask, which is the basic version.
Uh-huh.
Uh, for costing a little bit more money, we can do custom prosthetics, use the same fursuit, but then we use custom prosthetics to give different looks. And that's what we did with Northern Quest. They wanted something to look a little more Neanderthal, human-like. So, because they really wanted to see the actor's emotions and
Oh wow.
emoji through his face, facial movements, and just being silly. So they didn't want to cover it all up in a bunch of mask or a lot of thick rubber. So mainly it was just brows and nose.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we did those Northern Quest spots for them, and that was about a year ago. Uh, yeah, like I said, it's just if you go to the website, you can. I mean, God, there's so many things we've done with it. I kind of forget off the top of my head. Like I said, not a lot of movie work. We did the one film, and then we did one other film where I had a first suit that it was shot by a director in Northern California. I can't remember the name of it, but in the end, they wanted to set the Bigfoot on fire. So he just needed my fursuit that still looked good, that wasn't in the best shape, and I sold him one that I had that was pretty beat and ripping and falling apart. It wasn't really good for much else, and they put the guy in and set him on fire.
Flaming Bigfoots. So
Living with big.
what other I guess probably people are going to be interested in what kind of price range are you looking for people who'd be interested like in a rental? So
So
you
our
did SquatchCon, right? In Washington this weekend or?
No, I tried to, I don't really, I went to one, one festival. This was even before COVID. I'd always wanted to go try to take the costumes to a convention and set up like a photo booth for it,
Mhm.
just in the hopes that it would cover my costs, my
Right.
travel expenses, pay for the hotel and all that. It was the one they have in Kelso. They just had it this last weekend.
Oh yeah.
Squatch Fest. I think it's called
Right.
Squatch Fest. Is that what it
Yeah.
is?
I think.
Anyways, we took it down there. We had a lot of fun, but in the end, we just broke even, and it was
Yeah.
3-day weekend of work, and just to break even, you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
it's well. So we've never really done the convention circuit
Yeah.
with the costume.
So what movies outside the genre of Bigfoot? What
But
what was your
uh,
the master?
so like I said, when I first started the business, moved to LA, my first job was for the movie. I always wanted to work on B horror movies. Mainly, I grew up like on full moon movies. I love full moon movies, and I ended up. My first job was actually Outbreak. It was like a big budget film, and
Yeah.
that just like blew my mind. And then from there, I went over and worked at Stan Winston's. We did Island of Dr. Moreau, The Relic, uh, Ghost in the Darkness. And then I sort of jumped around from different shops, worked for Tom Berman and some other effect shops. And I kind of, a lot of my career, for some reason, sort of honed in on creating realistic animals to do effects in films where you can't use real animals.
Right.
So in the end, people don't even realize it's an effect they're seeing.
Uh-huh.
It's just been substituted by a fake animal, whether it's animatronic or whatever.
Right.
So I kind of became known for that, working with fake furs and hair work and things like that. Uh, Probably one of the silliest stories. They were doing pickup shops for uh, Austin Powers, the first Austin Powers movie, and I didn't even know what it was. Like I said, it hadn't been publicized yet, and they had already shot it. And they were just doing pickups at the end, and I get a Polaroid picture of Mike Myers with his head shaved, and he's making this like goofy face in the picture. And the producer on the phone tells me he's just like they FedEx, this is before internet. They FedEx me this Polaroid, so this is what we want this hairless cat to look like, and it's going to be frozen. And I'm just like, okay. And they're like, but we need it by Monday, and this was a Thursday.
Oh my
And I'm
God.
just like, oh my gosh. I go, I don't know. It's like I've got some cat molds, but I don't, they're meant to have fur on them. I was like, I can sort of uh, foam patch and do the wrinkles and stuff like that. I go, but it's probably going to be like a medium shot quality. It's not because I'm not sculpting it for you and molding it. I don't have time to do that. Like, oh no, it's no problem. That's fine. That's perfect. So I spent the weekend making this prop cat, frozen mini Mr. Biggles or Mr. Bigglesworth, and they shoot it and they promised me there would never be a close-up, and then you go see the film and its head fills the screen. It's like not only is it a close-up, it's an extreme close-up. And then I was in horror at first, and then I thought to myself, well, I guess I should take that as a compliment, because obviously the director thought that he could push in that close and it was still convincing.
I thought it
So
was a real cat. I really did. I was surprised. Like, oh, I didn't know that was fake.
yeah, I mean, we did a lot of alligators, with stunts with alligators, of course, horses, and just all kinds of stuff. You know, so I sort of got known in the industry for doing fake animals or realistic fake animals. And I guess it kind of started when I was working at Stan's when they were doing Ghost in the Darkness, because they did all
Uh,
the animatronic lions and
right,
stuff like that. And the thing about Stan's is it was just a melting pot of the top tier artists, and that's what was
right.
great about that. So with that, you get the money and the time needed to create what you want to create, and that's why they rise to the top. So all the artists there, just amazing, amazing work. And then sometimes you have to bank something out over the weekend, but that's what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah,
That's the
oh,
business.
that's amazing. So, tell me about the busts. Because that one you did
Oh,
a Patty
the
from,
Patty replica bust. Yeah.
I think it's so realistic.
So I've always been a huge fan of the Patty Patterson Gimlin film, and I don't think it's fake for the life of me. Because I've done costumes.
Right,
Not only the fact, I mean, you throw in the argument, it's like, well, this was 1967, right? Is that whenever it was filmed? 67,
right. 67, right.
67, and what was going on in Hollywood there, the technology they had. That argument, you can make that argument alone just on that, but just seeing what it is, and the way that the sunlight hits it and the sheen and the hot spots you get on it, it doesn't read fake fur whatsoever. And
Uh,
trust me, I've looked at any and every kind of fake fur out there.
right.
In
And you'd be
fact,
weird to know.
yeah, and I would know. I always tell this one story when I talk about the sheen of real fur, and my eye being able to tell is because it's trained. Is we were hired by the Canadian government many years ago. They wanted to produce those. They wanted us to look into producing those bearskin hats that they wear
Right.
because it takes. They wear them in England, but it takes one Canadian bear to make one of those hats.
Wow.
And obviously, with times, it's like, well, do we really need to be killing bears to make these silly hats
Mm.
for the Royal Guard? And so they hired us to do research, and we hired the top manufacturers of custom fake furs to buying stuff from Germany, wherever we could, and trying to test and analyze and make something that was comparable to real bear skin and how it moves and looks and works. And there was nothing artificial that would even come close because the real fur has a natural oil in it and it repels water naturally, and it just the way how it fluffs, all the fake stuff, as soon as it got slightly wet, it just it just
Oh,
fell,
wow.
and it didn't read as real whatsoever. And so ultimately, we never found any fake fur that came off that could replace the bearskin. So
Oh,
unfortunately, they're
wow.
still killing bears to make these hats.
Yeah.
But and that's when you see the Patty film, you see those hot spots. Uh, when we did Sabrina the Teenage Witch, that TV series, that was the thing that always stuck in me because it was a black cat, and it was just like fake fur is going to read as fake fur. So we actually used rabbit pelt fur and transferred it onto a stretch backing, so that when it was lit, it read as a black cat fur as opposed to fake fur. And that's why I think the Patty film is real, is just because the way it moves, the way the highlights and the hot spots hit it, and the bright sunlight,
Wow.
uh, it can't be faked.
Yeah.
Not even in today's tech. That's why nobody today has even made. Everybody can argue the fact. It's like, well, go make a fake fur suit. Why don't I could take my fake fur suit out in the woods, mimic the movement, and someone will right away be able to tell, oh, that's fake. And that's today's technology, which they didn't have back then.
Wow. Yeah, that's what one question I was like, should I ask? Should I not ask? Because I don't want to like if the Patterson Gimlin film turned out to be a hoax. I mean, that was like, no one likes to hang their head on the single
Yeah,
head on a single hook. But I mean, for me, that's like the pivotal thing. Plus it's like in conjunction with footprints.
yeah.
The
Well, the
eyewitness.
nice thing about the Patterson film, though, too, is like obviously it's a crappy camera, it's grainy film, it's old. Uh, it was shaky. I mean, obviously now that they have image stabilization, it helps. You still get weird anomalies because it's old film, even
Right.
before Bill Bunz had digitized it. Uh, but like I said, with just some of the basic movement and costumings and the bulkiness and how you can see a lot of the underlying muscle structure working. None of that reads through even in today's Hollywood costumes. They can, but you're talking top tier effects, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent to make these costumes.
Not
And I think today that's why no one's ever
rodeo
attempted
cowboys.
to even do the Patterson film as a recreation, because just off the top of their head to even think to compare, the amount they would have to spend. You know, like I said, when I go buy new fur for one of my rental costumes, just for me to buy the fur, I'm looking to drop about 15K just to buy the fur, and
Wow.
that's before I turn it into anything. So obviously, you would use that type of fur. So that's why nobody's even tried, because they know the amount of money it would take to
Right.
spend, and it's like it's
Wow.
ridiculous.
So just to because of your level of expertise, can you start on say Patty's head where the crown is from the sagittal
Uh-huh.
crest and work your way down all the way across the body in your mind to the foot, the bottom of the feet, from your perspective, just so
Uh-huh.
people will know, like the whole package.
I'm not following. What do you
I
mean
was
by the
just saying,
question?
if you could give me your perspective from of Patty the Bigfoot in the film,
Uh-huh.
if you could imagine her from the top of the head and describe her all the way down with your level of expertise in that field.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, the whole thing about the Patty film is you don't really get to see her face until she does the turn.
Right, right.
At that point, though, everything from here down is just kind of a blur. Like you, that's why when I did my replica, that I based my replica, I blew it up to scale based on what they figured out the size was. And that alone, when I did the sculpture, I was like, wow, it's like this head is so big. It's like its eye placement is out here compared to humans, which is in here, you know. And then plus the nose, even though it's a hooded, you can see it's a hooded nose. A normal, human's nose wouldn't. This bridge would be in the way. You
Oh,
would have to push their eyes out even further so you'd have room. So I did the sculpture just sort of. I did it by fun at first. I was just like, oh, like what would I think that this would look like in real life. So I did the blow up, did the sculpture, the clay sculpture, and then I was really getting into it so much. I realized I was like, I'm going to mold this and cast one for myself just as a keepsake, and did that. And of course, once it was done, I put some pictures online of it. Uh, just to kind of show it like on Facebook, and then I immediately got contacted by, I think it was the Texas Bigfoot Field Researchers Society or something like that, and they offered to
uh-huh.
buy it. And I'm just like, I just made it. So they were doing some show and they wanted it. So they offered me a bunch of money for it, and I said, okay, I'll make another one for myself, I guess. And then I kind of did that. And probably my favorite picture of it is with Dr. Jeff Meldrum. It was the one I did for the Texas Bigfoot people. He was at one of their shows and he poses next to it, and he uses that for a promo shot every now and then. And
I've
that
seen
makes me
that. Yeah.
smile. He actually reached out to me and he was just like, "Is it okay if I use that?" I'm like, "Absolutely." I was just like, "I love that picture." He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he
But
is.
yeah, so I mean, I've over the years, every now and then, it's like every time I don't have one for myself, I make one for myself, and then someone buys it from me, and then I'm left without one again, which is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So over
Oh,
the
what a
years,
great,
I've
what
probably
a
made at
great
least
compliment.
so over the years I've probably made at least, I don't know, 8 to 10 of these things, and I'm out. I'm just pulling the mold back out and thinking, okay, I'm going to make myself another one.
That's awesome.
but but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I mean,
really real. And the other thing about the film is when you see it walking away from the camera,
yeah,
and I think it's after the turn, and you can see the bottom of the feet. But what really got me interested was the calf,
yeah,
because I could see the calf muscles
yeah,
stretch,
yeah,
kind of like you could see it fluctuate and stretch like a real calf.
yeah,
And I don't,
yeah,
if there was a suit, you wouldn't be able to see the calf. Even in tights, with hair stuck on it, you'd be hard pressed
yeah.
to see that because the wear marks in the hair correspond to like the muscle structure.
The one thing that I've always, yeah, the one thing that I've always, there's always this: is it real? Is it not? With me looking at the fur and the details like you just stated, I say it's real. And then you obviously over the years you've had people like Bob Aronimus who claimed he was in the suit,
Mm.
and they've even filmed him doing the Patty walk. And I admit his gait is almost exact. It's not scaled right, but it's like, wow, it's kind of uncanny. But then you listen to an interview with him and he says, well, what was the costume? How was it made? And he says it's like a football helmet with some horse hide. I was like, no. As soon as he said that, it's like, his guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't use real hides for costumes, period.
Right.
It's tanned leather. That stuff does not fold, bend, or stretch
It's
worth a
real.
damn.
It doesn't have
Yeah,
much play.
it's so tough. Like, you
And
would,
he had,
it would jump out at you in a heartbeat if that was
and he had
tanned
years to,
leather
and
hide.
he had years to mimic the film.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. He has, yeah, he has the
mimicking it.
film to try to match the gate. So I mean, I get that point, but as soon as he tried to say how the someone asked him how the costume was made, his story all fell apart at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah, it's just baloney.
Well, I was talking to Daniel Perez about it because he's done a lot of research about, he goes to the site and he's done measurements and stuff. And
Yeah,
he came out with a mathematical equation or something, based on some of the artifacts in the photos. And I think Lieberman and those guys, the Bluff Creek Project has done a
yeah,
lot. And I think they came up with like almost 7 feet. And
yeah,
then Daniel Perez went to talk to Hieronymus, and he knocked on the door, and he opened the door, and as soon as he found out he wanted to talk to him about the Sasquatch, um, you know, stuff, that he just said, not interested, and walked off. And then Daniel said, that's an awful small Bigfoot. So, I mean, that's what his perspective was.
yeah. It's just,
The guy's pretty big, but compared to that,
yeah.
he's
To Bob around us,
not
yeah,
a
he's not
midget or anything. He's pretty big.
exactly.
I mean, compared to that, I mean the width. I had a
Yeah,
grandfather on my dad's side who was a Chiricahua Apache guy, and he's just pretty much one. By the time I knew him, he just sat in the corner and kind of like didn't say much.
yeah.
But the guy was, from his chest to his back was like 2 feet thick. You know what I mean? And his shoulders were giant and round, and he just sat there like this. You could tell he used to be a huge person before he got,
Yeah,
80 or 85 years old. And I think that Sasquatch in the film, Patty film, is big like that.
yeah,
It's like huge. It's like that mass, and it's all muscle mass. There's no fat.
yeah, yeah,
It's like when you see a bull walking, you see
yeah.
those muscles move.
That's the other thing is, like, my rental costume, I use 5 to 7 inch hair on it, and I use that simply because it hides a lot. I don't have to put a muscle suit on it and have it, the actor underneath all of that padding and all that weight, and then trying to clean it with all the sweat afterwards that accumulates in it.
Oh
So I try
wow.
to make it as simple of a costume that but gives a realistic look. And that's why I use the super long fur. But if the patty film, you can tell right off, like I said, with a trained eye, I can tell the fur is maybe an inch at best, inch and a half, because of the way it lays. It's tight, and the way that the sun sheens off of it. You can tell the length of the hair. And like I said, a horsehide, tanned horsehide, no, that's something that anything short like that, fake fur is going to read a million miles away, no matter what it is.
It's like when you
You know,
go to the zoo and you see an old gorilla or an old chimp, how
yeah,
it's, they've got this wear pattern, and
yeah.
it's long some places and short some places because of the
That's the same with
biology.
Patty. You can tell.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like a natural patterning of
yeah,
the hair.
yeah. Like I said, I just wish I knew what was going on down here,
Yeah.
because that's the only part that just kind of is a gray blur. And
Well,
obviously, I took the liberty to sort of give my replica sort of, thin lips and
yeah,
whatnot, what I would envision anatomy, basing my skills as an artist, uh, anatomically, what I would think that would look like. But it's just
right.
sort of this gray blur. I can't tell what's going on down there.
Because of shadows and whatnot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't even realize as a kid that the thing had breasts until as an adult someone mentioned it, and I looked
Yeah.
really close. And it's like, oh, I guess it does. That's kind of
I,
odd.
I didn't really notice that either until, like you said. Then I looked up when silicone breasts were invented, and I guess saline breasts were just came out in '67 in France, but they didn't have here yet because there is some jiggle action going on.
Well, and then there again, like I said, silicone is really new because it had just came out in the effects
Yeah.
business.
Yeah,
I
they just
was
got
in
the
the effects
saline
business.
ones.
Yeah, the saline bags, those were around.
But those
But
were more, I guess they were just invented and started being used in production in France at the time, but they really
yeah,
hadn't come over here too much.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
imagine the cost would have been prohibitive back then.
I mean, there's a lot of people, in the effects industry that, even, people that do what I do, they think it's fake. And then there's a lot of people that think it's real too. There's some people that are just on the fence.
Yeah.
Uh, like I said, with my experience and my experience with fake fur, and I know what fake fur looks like, and that does not look like fake fur.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That'll save a lot of people's careers. I mean, it's what uh, Daniel Perez, back to him. He's with his Bigfoot Times. He's collecting a list of all the Bigfoot books that have
Wow.
the access numbers and whatnot,
Yeah.
library numbers or whatever. And I think last time I looked, he'd surpassed 1,400.
Wow.
So all those people would not be selling books.
Well, it's just one of those things. So like people have real life sightings of this thing, and they've seen something, and
Yeah.
they believe what they saw.
And
I wish I saw it. I
yeah, me
never
too.
had that experience. I grew up in Southern Ohio. I played a lot in the woods, but there was, oddly enough, I uh, I grew up in the same town where uh, Wayne is from.
Yeah, yeah.
From that, and yeah, my
I
parents went to
listen to
school with
his
him.
podcasts all the time.
Does he have podcasts?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, I think that's the one I listen to. The interesting thing is about the mouths is some people find it have canines and some have chiclets. So I think that there's like two different varieties, maybe or four.
Yeah,
I think four different varieties because you got the small ones like the skunk ape, who's thin and
yeah.
a little bit thinner, not as robust. Then you get the patty kind, which is huge. Then you get the more human type, and then you get the baboon type like Oma.
And that's the thing is me creating Bigfoot too. Like I'll get people to see my replica or even see my costume stuff, and they'll just be like, "Oh my god, that's exactly what I saw." Or the other half are like, "That's nothing what it looks like." I'm
Right.
just like, in the end, I realized even if you've never had an experience, people in their mind uh, have a visual idea of what it's supposed to look like, and that's mentally what they think it looks like. So if you don't recreate what they see in their mind, then it's fake to
Right.
them.
Yeah, because I mean, there's so many teams and restaurants and that have it as a mascot and stuff, and
Yeah,
it's just part of
because you
the
don't have to
culture.
pay a licensing right to it. That's why.
Well, I tell you what, it's just I'm out of time, so I was wondering, Carl Crew, who is the guy who invented Bigfoot's great nephew, who saw the first.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
anyway, he's also in the movie industry, and I was wondering maybe we could all three chat sometime.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, I've
And Daniel
I've talked
Perez
to.
too.
Yeah,
So he's
yeah.
so really into cameras and angles, and you guys would probably.
I had I have I kind of befriended Ro Sahibi, and he did a short film and put it up on YouTube, and that's my Bigfoot in there. I kind of gave him that clip because he needed something, but where he talks about the Justin Smeehouse story, and like I've talked to Justin. I'm like, there's just all these fascinating people that have had these experiences, and whether they're out there in left field